Hi there and welcome back to Japan, and for a slightly different review from normal. See, Regal Lily's song Tokyo was my target for a review recently, but instead led to more of a fascinating existential question as to the nature of this very channel. So to explain this, I'm going to have to do this review a bit differently. Let's start at the end. Do I recommend Regal Lily's Tokyo? Yes. Who do I think it's best suited for? Well, fans of melodic Japanese girl rock bands like Scandal, Silent Siren, Chatmonchy and so on. Am I a fan of these bands? Yes, I am. So do I like Regal Lily's Tokyo? No. Really, no. So what the hell is going on? Why am I recommending you listen to a song that I wouldn't want to hear again myself? First things first, today's metaphor is that Regal Lily's Tokyo is corn on the cob. Work that one out for yourself at the end. Well, before we talk about the song, we have to dive into what a review actually is, as many people have rightly suggested that the reviewing of art has little real purpose in this modern world. I remember Ricky Gervais saying this quite well.
You know, it all helps. Even a bad review helps because people go, this is bollocks. You know, people, it doesn't make any difference to the people who watch things. I've never seen anyone go, well, I thought I liked this show, but this fella doesn't like it, so maybe I don't. And particularly at this stage, you know, early on, they can make a difference. I imagine, in fact, not so much now, because of social media and everyone knows that their own opinion is all that matters. But it's still nice. It's all publicity is good publicity, I guess.
It was a question I asked myself when switching from doing reaction videos to doing review videos, where it was all down to my opinions and I couldn't just hide behind a popular trend format. People don't need me to tell them if they're going to like something. They can just type into YouTube and decide for themselves in about half the time after all. But to get to that point, let's first go back to Regal Lily's song, because this piece of music has so many things that I know I enjoy. It has a real flashy energy, a focus on memorable melody, and a playful madness that bleeds through in the final third at very least. The band even appeals to my bias towards Japanese-style higher register vocals, which often deliver such great deal of detail and nuance in a song. It reminds me of the purity of Chatmonchy songs, with the humanity of Silent Sirens' performances and the vigour of Scandal. But after a couple of listens, it was grating on my ears horribly, and the reason started to become clear, if not in part because of how minor they actually were. To a small extent was the simple repetitive guitar line in the verse, which was neither impactful or rhythmic and was supported by very little nuance underneath. This was compounded by the number of other Regal Lily songs that do exactly the same thing previously. Then was the way the vocals wavered and broke at the end of long notes in a way that was at total odds with the heavier chorus that they mostly ran on top of. It was clearly an attempt to sing underpowered and give something of a humanity to her voice rather than just pelting out the big high notes like so many other bands do. And like I say, both elements had been present in earlier Regal Lily songs, some of which I'd found much more sonically engaging, like Rickenbacker for example. They hadn't been such an issue before, but these were clearly popular components of the band's sound as they had been stepped up to a level where they were now problems for me, at very least. So, was it fair to say that elements I didn't enjoy had gone from acceptable background features to irritating signature sounds? Admittedly, with a lack of any growth in the areas I had previously enjoyed about the band, my final personal takeaway was a song lacking in nuance, impact, and with a grating vocal performance. So to have a look at this, let's split these problem areas down into two. First being the writing. I do respect the efforts to go a little more mad towards the end, and although I really think more could have been done to make the verses interesting, I can't help but feel that the oversimplicity of the majority of the piece was very intentional, and my enjoyment of bands like Chatmonchy shows simplicity is not an immediate damnation for me. Second is the singer's vocal delivery, but again this is clearly an intentional attempt to sound more delicate, and I do enjoy the occasional atonal trick like say Bish's Ina when she grits her voice, or Oats guy singing through a megaphone. So on an objective technical viewpoint, it's hard to say this song is doing anything wrong without throwing stones around a glass house at very least, and thus it is clear that my dislike of the sound is purely subjective to the way I like these things done, the way I like my simple songs executed, and my oddball vocals delivered. With this considered, my initial thought was to not write a review at all, but I couldn't help but realise that to run away from something like this would be to ignore having found a fundamental intrigue in the nature of what I do here. So instead, I decided to step back and review that instead. Review what the hell this is we do here, and why we review still in this information age. See, what a reviewer in 2021 is really here to do is a thing we've discussed before on Discord and live chat, but never was as easy to highlight as it is here. To humbly and simply stir the pot of conversation and opinion, really. To tell you what the reviewer thinks, but not like a judge in Days of Reviewing Old, not a snooty gatekeeper, but instead as a voice who listeners hopefully trust, to justify a subjective viewpoint in the hope of helping listeners consider theirs. I have heard the argument that this over-analysis is against the point of music itself, but it does allow me to sit here and say that there are reasons you should listen to something that I myself probably will not be listening to again. It's why I can tell you that Regal Lily's Tokyo has all elements of something I know most who like the same bands as I would enjoy. I can tell you that those who like complexity and layering may find this song doesn't do enough, although let it play out and see if the end is a more rewarding payoff for you than it was for me. And I would warn that the vocal performance is really going to be a matter of extremely subjective taste, as it would be with many of their peers though, Silent Siren as an example. And well, that's a pretty fair review. It's a way of taking objective observations about what the song is and hopefully helping to aid or at least question subjective views in a way that, at very least, gives us something interesting to talk about. Seeing that difference between enjoying something personally and respecting it as a fellow creative is the true role of a reviewer in 2021, in my opinion, and a much more useful and humble role than it was ever before. In an age of groupthink and echo chambers, if people respect you enough to stir up a discussion, that's truly humbling. Especially in music, where we can all start the conversation knowing that the only end truth is that we each like what we each like. Being brave enough to walk into a conversation knowing that any attempt to win proves you've already lost by missing the point of why we are here and even talking, that's a pretty good thing in my opinion. I mean, so many of my recent frustrations with social media have been due to seeing people trying to win more than learn from each other. And yet I have posted reviews with negative aspects about beloved bands like Nemophila or Bandmaid's Clupo project and had them met with mostly positive replies, which is wonderful. When I can't even talk to my family without hearing broad-stroke stereotypes of my opinions that they don't understand beyond a broadsheet news headline, but I can have a nuanced conversation with strangers about the music they truly love, that's wonderful. When a comment section on complicated social issues is full of people who are sure they are right and will berate any disagreement, but a discussion about simple old music is awash with friendly bafflement at countering tastes, for us here at least, that is wonderful. Music and its discussion is truly a refuge for those of us who simply like to think and learn. So maybe Regal Lily have totally lost me with this song, but I respect their fans all the more for it. I respect anyone who's willing to be enriched by listening to the thoughts of a reviewer who clearly disagrees with their tastes for as many minutes as you have been listening at this point. So, thank you. You're what makes music great and what makes this job worth doing. So, see you in the comments, on the social media. A thank you to our patrons. And, I won't be listening to Tokyo by Regal Lily again in any rush. But if you haven't already, I hope you do. And until I see you back here again, sometime hopefully soon, for now, ciao ciao.